Well, good morning. It's certainly a pleasure to be here with you in Milan. And as an Australian, I actually grew up in a major Italian city, Melbourne. So I have a bit of understanding of the Italian way of life. Aviation is a tough business. It's a global business, and it's an industry that's impacted by many factors outside our control, whether it's economic, whether it's pandemic, whether it's war. These issues impact how we navigate and how we work as an industry. Etihad Airways is very much a global business, but it's a global business where the markets we tackle have such an impact on each other. So I may be based in Abu Dhabi, operating a Middle Eastern airline that has a very much a local presence and flavor within the DNA, but we are truly global. Now, when you talk about innovation, we're an airline in a sector which has many global legacy carriers, new entrants, and in markets where we have the low-cost carriers. We're just a new airline, one of the newest airlines in business, established in 2003. We're owned by the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. We operate over 120 aircraft. We have over 250 aircraft on order. We have a narrow-body operation within the GCC, the Middle East and the Indian subcontinent, but also a global operation too. When you start a business from scratch, a non-legacy airline, it does give you the chance to take the best of the aviation sector, but also to innovate in what you create. Now, I'm at arm's length of the government. I have a strong commercial mandate, and when the business was established, the mandate given was very clear. Run a safe airline, because safety is fundamental in our business. Run an airline that was best in class, so in first class, business class, economy, where you decide to compete, be the best, not the largest. Through connectivity, become an economic enabler for Abu Dhabi, for their transformation plans, and finally, make money. Make money. Right size, right shape. And that's been key from the start. The industry. Even in tough times, the industry continues to evolve, it continues to develop. Markets open up. The Indian subcontinent, South Asia, China continue to accelerate, order more aircraft, and as the Chinese market opens through tourism, as the Indian subcontinent opens through infrastructure improvement, we certainly see that global traffic flows will continue, but the environment will become more competitive. So in establishing an airline with a clean sheet of paper, with a very clear mandate, and I'm in Abu Dhabi. In Dubai, there's another airline you may have heard of called Emirates. In Qatar, there's another airline, Qatar Airways. The competition is extremely fierce. We have to work against the US carriers, the European carriers, who have major hubs, major infrastructure developed over many years. And today we're seeing in Europe and America, we have both the major US carriers trying to block the Gulf Airlines, and also in Europe, we have Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, also trying to block our growth. But that's part of doing business. So that means you do need to differentiate, you need to build a network, and you also need to achieve economic scale in how you manage and lead your business. So in it being established in 2003, we were very clear with the game plan. When I arrived in 2006, there was no way we could replicate the strategy of Emirates. Emirates, 30 years old, very clear strategy. To compete was about buying aircraft. That just didn't make sense. We also saw that airlines such as Turkish were emerging. We saw the opportunity of India and China. So what was the right model? We will be a mid-sized airline when we peak with 150 to 170 aircraft. Emirates will be double that and plus. So we started working with other airlines in what we call code share. Because what we saw over the horizon in a digital society, that connectivity is fundamental. When you look at the broad segmentation through leisure, through business, through ethnic, visiting friends and families, religious travel, worker traffic, that the ability to connect when someone went online and we were able to offer a solution was fundamental in building our proposition. We then looked at how could we invest in other airlines? How could we invest in other airlines where, on one hand, we were bilaterally constrained? So how could we invest to achieve access for market on one hand, as we've done in Germany with Air Berlin, with Alitalia now in Italy, with Jet Airways in India. But at the same time, how could we achieve scale? How could we reduce the cost base? It's one of the challenges of airlines due to the ownership and bilateral structure. We all duplicate our overheads. Training centres, MROs, pilot training, we totally duplicate. So how can we change the cost book to become more efficient? How do we develop deep commercial relationships where you have multi-brands, multi-code share to ensure that the connectivity strategy works, not just in network, but in frequent flyer, and how you ensure the loyalty of the customer stays within your framework? And how do we take advantage of our hub, Abu Dhabi? Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, many times said to me, how do 3 Gulf carriers survive in that small radius? For me, as a CEO, within 3 hours flying time, Middle East, the Gulf states, and India, that's a population in excess of 1 billion people. It's a population where the markets are underserviced, the infrastructure isn't first class, it's evolving, and where, quite frankly, air transportation links are required. So when I'm asked the question, can you survive? Of course we can. We can survive, we can compete, and we can grow. So we differentiate through innovation in product, in service, and how we work with other carriers. From a product perspective, we operate 380s, we operate 787s, 777s, and 320s. And what we've done with the introduction of the A380 was look about the real estate on the aircraft. On an aircraft, there's space you can use. It's fundamental you get your seat count right, you get the weight right, so you get the range of the aircraft. And with the 380, we use that to create a product that was different in the world. We call it the Residence. There's only one on every A380. And there's a space at the front of the aircraft that couldn't be used. From an innovation point of view, we said, why can't we have a penthouse on an aircraft? Why not? We had talks 6 years ago in London, Paris, New York, Abu Dhabi with focus groups. What can we do to innovate? What can we do to change perception and meet that criteria of make money? And if you fly the 380 and you want to fly in the Residence, it's cheaper than a private jet, but the thought in the seat, in the cabin, but more importantly in first class, the innovation in business class with the dovetail seats and economy on the lower deck was about getting the seat count right. In our business, it's the number of seats on the aircraft at the right average fare that ensures we get the right utilization of the asset. So we had the economic answer covered. But more importantly, how do we get the product and innovation to create a halo effect that this is unique? And when we launched the A380 in the Residence, in the first 24 hours, it was over 20 million social media hits worldwide. The pickup was extraordinary. And within the 380, it was about business, but it was also about economy with the introduction of the smart seat. Innovation, we're a non-legacy airline. What does that mean? If I was a European airline, my cabin crew, my pilots are unionized. We're not unionized. What does that mean? We pay the same money. We have the same conditions. It means we can roster. We don't work on seniority. It means from a productivity perspective, we're able to utilize our workforce more effectively. So butlers, chefs, nannies in economy for mothers. It's the same crew count. So we have the same number of crew as a European competitor or Asian competitor, but we label and train our crew differently because it's about the customer. It's about segmentation in first, business and economy. One of the biggest challenges I have with the nannies is that I have to explain to our business class passengers they're for the children. They can't come up and work in business with a businessman. And it's about taking the child from a mother. When would you like the child fed? It's caring. We have a zone on the back of the aircraft where you'll see the kids' pictures, paintings are on the wall in the back of the galley. So it is about innovation and what we call guest experience, because at the end of the day, you're all travellers. We want your money. We want you to come back. We want to get a little bit more. It's about elasticity within the pricing. So product, tick, is one of our key criteria in setting up a new airline. Code share is how we stretch the network. We will be a mid-size airline. So we embarked very early on developing code shares throughout the world. With American Airlines, we fly to Chicago, to Washington, to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, to Dallas. But then we connect with American Airlines beyond. We work with Air France KLM between Europe, between Amsterdam and Paris, between Abu Dhabi, and we feed them to Southeast Asia, Australasia, because today, with the exception of British Airways, no European airline flies to Australia, for example. We work with Air France KLM over their hubs to feed us into their secondary network. And whether it be South African Airways or Kenyan Airways, stretching the network just through here, that gives us over 600 destinations just with our codeshare partners. So organic growth. We have a very strong order book, operating over 100 aircraft today. We have another 200 aircraft on order. We signed a major deal in 2008. In 2013, the 2008 deal takes us out to aircraft in 2020. The 2013 deal takes us out to 2040. So we'll be the largest operator of the 787 in the world. We're ordered 71 787s and 62 A350s in addition to our 10 A380s. So we have a good footprint as Etihad Airways. We have our code share relationships. Then we looked at the opportunity to invest in airlines, and it's very relevant to the Italian market. But this was about, as I said earlier, how do we overcome bilateral challenges where we're blocked and we can't enter markets or operate into secondary cities? But more importantly, or as important, is how do we achieve scale? How do we, from a financial perspective, work smarter? How do we achieve greater productivity? How do we align, maintain our personalities, and achieve consistency in time in product and services? So we own 49% of Alitalia, obviously 49% of Air Serbia, 40% of Air Seychelles, a small airline in Switzerland, Etihad Regional. We have Air Berlin, 29%, and Virgin Australia, 24%. Jet Airways in India, 24%. Now, all these airlines have a different story. With Air Serbia and Air Seychelles, the governments of those countries approached my shareholder and said, can you invest in these businesses that were on the verge of bankruptcy and turn them around? We met with the governments, we looked at the modelling, and we took a view. If the debt of the past was gone, if the overhead was reduced, if modern practices were in place, and we connected the networks, could they move back to profitability? The answer was yes. So Air Seychelles, small airline, Indian Ocean, 60,000 people. We stepped in, we took them from 6 aircraft initially down to 2 aircraft. We got rid of their 767s, put in 2 A330s, which we operated, so they had commonality of fleet. Straight away, the training was done in Abu Dhabi. The maintenance was done in Abu Dhabi. We linked the networks, downsized by 500 people, right shape, right size. 4 years in a row, they've made money. Air Serbia, the former Yugoslav Airlines, 2 years ago we stepped in. Within the Balkans regions, there was a connectivity option for us into Germany with Air Berlin, over Abu Dhabi down to Australasia, where there's a huge Serbian community. So the traffic flows were there. Similar, restructured, common aircraft, A320s. The back room is in Abu Dhabi. 2 years later, they're about to now announce their second profit in a row. So we knew airlines with a very clear roadmap can be flipped. Now, Virgin Australia, we fly to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Perth. They give us 45 cities to fly to in Australia and New Zealand that connect. The uniqueness there is that both Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand are also investors, but the partnership works. Jet Airways, India, 40 million Indians travel internationally each year. When we entered this deal with Jet Airways, we had 2% of the market. 3 years later, with Jet Airways, we in fact have 21% of the India market. So combined over Abu Dhabi, connecting to Australasia, Southeast Asia, connecting to America because we have US customs clearance in Abu Dhabi, and to Europe, we're the major international operator out of India today. And likewise, restructuring, looking at common back rooms. Air Berlin, very similar, probably a tougher journey due to the restructuring within Germany. But if you start to step back and you look at Alitalia network, Air Berlin network coming together from a pan-European perspective, feeding in with Air Serbia, a base in the Indian Ocean, which is a high-yield market ex-Europe, access to India over Abu Dhabi, and in the future we want Jet to operate into Italy also. Then you overlay Air France KLM, coming east from a network perspective, there's no stronger coalition. But the real hard work behind the scenes is the focus on cost. So all the airlines have moved to a common platform with Sabre, which is an airline technologies company. As a collective, we're now the 7th largest airline group in the world. So when we talk to organizations from a cost and negotiation position, it's a different story. We operate 700 aircraft, so the dialogue I have with Boeing, Airbus, Rolls-Royce, and GE is totally different. And within our contracts, we can move aircraft between the airlines. So the investment in the airlines is, yes, a network solution. It's a loyalty frequent flyer solution because we're the major owner now of the frequent flyer program, so we're creating a global loyalty company, but as vigorous is cost. And if you look at systems, for example, 2 days ago we signed a major global deal with IBM to provide support across the aviation group. Now, the opportunity with partners is something that has never been achieved with the alliances of SkyTeam, One World, or Star Alliance, because from an innovation point of view, we look back and gone, well, the structured model of alliances isn't working. We didn't believe they were making enough money. And that the more dominant carriers in the alliances, well, they were telling the mid-sized carriers and the smaller carriers what to do. So what was fundamental was connecting networks and schedules, which is what we're doing. The loyalty offering, we're aligning product and service, but maintaining the character of the respective airlines. And as a group of CEOs that we could sit around the table and make decisions fast. And if there's a competitive edge that we have, it's in fact that. When we meet, we discuss, we move. And that's just a reflection of the brands where we come together as one. All have their own personality, all have their own market, all have their own board of directors, but commercially we link and come together. So partnerships means guests. Sometimes when an airline CEO talks, we will talk about safety, we'll talk about finance, we'll talk about restructuring, but we don't talk enough about the guests. We don't carry passengers, we have guests. And that guest logic thinking about connectivity, about technology, about simplicity, about product and service, access to lounges, but how we track you as a guest is fundamental. Why? Because it's all about pricing. It's all about inventory control. It's all about elasticity. It's about making money, and it's making sure the right aircraft is on the right route to make the right return. It's making sure that we're looking at the timings of who comes out of Italy first, because we fly out of Rome and Milan, as does Alitalia. Alitalia should come out first, so there isn't a crew expense. These are the fundamentals that we look at to ensure that we're deploying the asset effectively. Now that just gives you a sense of, the roadmap we give, Italy for example, but, network in our business is fundamental. We've built a hub with an airline called Etihad that wasn't known 10 years ago. Today, we're one of the leading global brands of the world. Abu Dhabi is the capital of the UAE, a global city, and quite frankly, it's about one-stop travel. It's about one-stop travel that we can take somebody from Rome to Abu Dhabi, direct to Melbourne, direct to Sydney, from Milan over Abu Dhabi, direct to Singapore, direct to Ho Chi Minh City. And that access, inbound, outbound, is not only good for Etihad and Alitalia, it's good for Italy. It's good for Italy. So that strong network that we're building is very important. And as I mentioned, we have Alitalia. They sit within SkyTeam. We're happy for them to sit in SkyTeam. Air Berlin sit in One World. I'm happy for them to sit in One World, provided it doesn't impact our global objectives as an aviation group. And we've actually placed SkyTeam, Air France, KLM on notice that the deal they have with Alitalia is a bad deal. And unless they rework the deal with Alitalia, then they will not renew the European joint venture on January 1 of 2017. And in our business, like all businesses, if you're not ahead of the curve and understanding change, and especially in my business, how markets can open, slots at airports can become available, and how you move fast, then you lose. And we're very focused as a business, as a group. We meet the criteria that's been set. And certainly, our strategy with our alliances, if you take my business, I operate at 82% load factor. If I didn't have my equity partners, I'd be around the mid-70s. So the in excess of $1 billion in revenues is one of the reasons that I also invest in these airlines. But as much business as I take out of India with Jet Airways, I actually place into India. So it's a different aviation model to give us the ability to get in shape, to be able to redeploy capacity. As I mentioned at the start, the challenge for us was with the crisis in the Middle East. We had viable routes in Baghdad, in Erbil, in Basra. We had to move off those markets. We redeployed that capacity into India. We had the challenges of Syria. So you have to be flexible enough with your capacity too, because the shocks you encounter, you just can't ground the aircraft. You have to redeploy the asset. So the benefit for us in this new model, which is seen as extremely innovative in aviation, is that we do build strong economic and operational collaboration. We are building step-by-step integrated networks, schedules. We're very focused on cost reduction, on best-in-class in-unit cost reduction, and benchmarking accordingly across the airlines. Procurement is a major opportunity. Resource sharing, making sure that we're taking advantage of talent and setting up what we call centers of excellence. So if the best place for revenue accounting is in Abu Dhabi for all the airlines, place it there. If the best place for a call center may be in Serbia for the group, place it in Serbia. If the best place for a function may be in India, that's where we place it. But how do we control and move that knowledge across the group and ensure that the control remains within the partner airline? So Italy, Alitalia, was quite interesting. I spent 12 months negotiating this agreement. I just concluded negotiating in India the first foreign direct investment in Jet Airways. And when they actually came to us, we said no. We just felt, as outsiders sitting in Abu Dhabi, investing in Alitalia just didn't make sense. As you know, they were on the verge of collapse. And certainly we were part of a $1.7 billion package to secure Alitalia. So we invested in Tessa and UniCredit, forgave debt, and I must admit the Italian shareholders and the Italian government were outstanding through this process. So when we got the game plan right, that we felt we could make the business work, what did we see in Alitalia? We saw a great brand. We saw a great network, but a poorly run business. A business that had been politicized, a business that had, for decisions I don't know, retreated from the north of Italy 10 years ago and became Rome-centric, and we'd seen the competition move into Italy. So when we stepped back and looked at, as we do from an aviation perspective, looked at the network and saw a strong north and south operation integrated into our global network, Air France KLM, on the right terms, we certainly believe that Alitalia could work. It was a game-changing deal because we had many condition precedents that we set to enter into the agreement that were agreed. And it was very tough because the mandate I have from my shareholder, unless you can make it work, don't do the deal. And we had to be convinced we could make it work. So from changing the Bassani law here in Linate to enable us to do more European flying and take advantage of the Linate hub of Alitalia, to right size and right shape, in making sure that we weren't burdened with the legacy challenges of the past. And all stakeholders, including the unions, have been outstanding. So, and that was key, because sitting back in Abu Dhabi, we had to be convinced that with management, with the people we place into the business, we could move the business back to profitability. And certainly, really as the statement says, it's not survived. Alitalia is back in business. Alitalia is back in business. It's growing, and it's a 3-year journey into our global partnership over the next 24 months now. It's going to meet the targets that we set this year. So from a financial perspective, revenue, cost, the fire at Rome Airport, however restructured, will meet the financial targets. Into next year, it'll break even, it'll move to profitability. What's more importantly, what I've seen in the last quarter of this year, the economic indicators for us of revenue, RASK and CASK, they're meeting their target. Yesterday, with the chairman, and I don't think we could have a better chairman than the former chairman of Ferrari and Luca de Montezemolo, we announced that new routes would be open. So we're consolidating the business, we're putting new people into the business. We announced yesterday new South American routes, new domestic Italian lounges that'll be completed over the next 12 months, new VIP lounges, chauffeur drive services for business class passengers, Wi-Fi on the wide-body aircraft. In fact, the whole fleet, new interiors by May of next year, uniform next year, website in November, investments of over 200 million euros. So, you know, it's not just about talk, it's about action. It's about how we, through innovation, bring this airline back into shape. Strong financial disciplines right across our airline. The focus through the chief financial officers and their teams is fundamental. We see finance within our business globally. They're part of the business. They're enablers. We call it our corporate financial control function, where we embed controllers into the business as a fundamental part of not only controlling, but building business cases and working with the satellite teams to improve their business. From a standing start, we've built a very strong business, a business philosophy. We're pleased that Fitch rated us A, the only airline in the world that is rated A recently. As an airline, we've worked very strongly with the financial markets. We've raised for aircraft $11 billion since I've been there. Now, we are owned by Abu Dhabi. We have no letters of comfort, no sovereign guarantees. It's not implicit, we're owned by Abu Dhabi, but we have to go and tell our story of how we're building a global business. And what's probably as important to me, we recently raised a bond, $700 million, unsecured, went to the market and told the story, and it was fully subscribed. And that was a reflection of the shape the businesses are in. In fact, having achieved and delivered on what we said we would do, and we can demonstrate that the partnerships are working. Aviation, it's a global business. We're local in brand, but it is a global business. We are impacted by so many factors outside of our control. But this strategy we have of organic growth, working with other airlines, and as importantly, investing in carriers such as Alitalia is fundamental. So at our press conference yesterday, people said to me, well, what are you going to do if Alitalia doesn't make it? Quite frankly, failure isn't an option. Alitalia is going to make it. Is there an exit strategy? No, there's no exit strategy. This is a long-term global strategy that we have to work in a global global market where bilaterals prohibit our ability to expand and access. And as I mentioned, we have carriers also trying to block us. But the real winner is you the customer or the guest.